Excelsior, true believers! You are about to embark upon a journey, a trip to the 70s and 80s when mighty Marvel Comics ruled over all. The Defenders, Doctor Strange, the Champions, Deathlock, the Submariner, the Incredible Hulk, Killraven, the Son of Satan, the Macabre Man-Thing, and all your other Bronze Age favorites every week appearing on Defenders Dialogue. Now here are your guides, Christopher Golden and Brian Keene.
Excelsior, true believers.
Excelsior indeed, and welcome back once again to Defenders Dialogue. I'm Brian Keene.
And I'm Christopher Golden. And Brian, it may be that despite my previous beliefs that we may have a fourth listener to this show, whoever wrote that kind article at Comic Book Resources naming the three MCU podcasts that people should be listening to in 2021 and having us be one of those three podcasts, clearly that person heard this podcast at least once, or maybe they heard 5 minutes of it while they were visiting a friend's house and didn't want to have only two things in their article and then figured they needed to slot in a third one.
No, I agree. That was a very nice surprise. I see our listener numbers, and it's significantly more than Chris likes to play up. But it is what it is. We are a very specific type of podcast, and we're not going to have a broad appeal, but we do have a listener base. But I was very surprised by that shout out on CBR.com.
Yeah.
Nice article. Nice.
Yeah, nice I was surprised too. I mean, again, it's, I no offense to those people who are listening to this show, but I'm not here for you. I'm here just to talk about comics with my friend, and that's why it's just so funny to me. It's like, anyway. I
think that's why people like it, because it's not in any way, shape, or form a professional podcast. The most professional thing about this show is our introduction music, and narration by Chet Williamson.
No, it is funny to me because it's like, again, to me, it's like, it's Hank Wagner and Cullen Bunn and maybe one other person. That's
Victor Laval and Wes Southard. That's who I know for sure listens to, and JMD Mateus and Scott Edelman. So we have celebrities listening as well.
6 people. All right.
But anyway, today we're going to talk
twice the number I ever expected.
We're going to talk about Marvel Team Up issues number 6 and 7, which equates to our listening audience, 6 or 7 people. Issue number 6, Spider-Man and the Thing. A reminder, we are not covering Marvel 2 and 1 today because we already covered those issues back during our discussion of the Defenders. In fact, Chris, at some time this week, in the week that our listeners are listening to this episode, I will be posting a guide to Defenders Dialogue about what we've covered and what episodes those consist of. It's going to be an index of sorts so people can find them easier.
That's actually a pretty smart thing to do. But again, it's you being aware of people listening to this show. I just had a weird echo. Oh,
I don't hear it. I don't hear it.
All right, cool.
I have my windows open, so people are probably going to hear jet skis out on the river and cars going by on the road. But again, this is not a professional podcast, so I don't care.
Do you have a jet ski out on the road?
I do not. I would like to own a jet ski, but my partner, author Mary Sangiovanni, has forbid me to purchase a jet ski.
Now, I just was doing a little looking. And it appears to me that this episode that we're recording right now is Defenders Dialogue number 138.
So there you go.
So there you go. Anyway, all right. So because those two Marvel 2-in-1s were both covered while we were doing the Defenders, we are doing Marvel Team Up issues 6 and 7 today. However, as a bonus, this Marvel Team Up number 6 does include Ben Grimm, the ever-loving blue-eyed Thing. So we still get our fix of Ben Grimm this week.
That's right. That's right. And we open right where we left off last issue, with Spider-Man standing over the unconscious body of the Puppet Master. And he is confronted by Ben Grimm, the ever-loving blue-eyed Thing, who says, "Hold it right there, pal. I want to have a word with you."
Which is, I'm sure, those are words you have spoken to your sons at one point or another.
No, I'm a pretty chill dad, I'm told.
I'm sure we all have our days. Anyway, Ben Grimm is there with his, at the time, girlfriend, now wife, Alicia Masters. We talked about her last episode. She is a blind woman who's a sculptor, whose stepfather is Philip Masters, also known as the Puppet Master. He can use radioactive clay to make puppets of people, and then has some way to mind control the people while holding those puppets. Ben finds the Puppet Master unconscious, and he's trying to wake him up to get him to explain what happened.
That's right. And there's something I like about this. Alicia, the voice of reason, she's like, Ben, maybe if you just gave Spider-Man a chance to explain. And he's like, "Let me handle this, woman. You just stay back there where you won't get hurt." Okay. Mm-hmm. But yeah, he wakes Puppet Master up. Puppet Master is, of course, terrified of Ben Grimm. When Alicia hears his voice, of course, she recognizes that it is her father. And she and Spider-Man get Ben to agree to set the Puppet Master down. And then, they have this touching reunion. And then Ben's like, "Okay, enough of that. I'm going to drag him off privately and have a discussion with him."
I know. But I just think this is like, Alicia knows you're dragging him off to beat the shit out of him. Right? I mean,
yeah.
And also, she's blind. So why do you have to take him in the other room? I'm like, if the logic is you don't want her to see what you're about to do, I don't know. It's just a weird scene, but I like it. It does have a good cop, bad cop quality to it.
That's right. It does. It does. Absolutely. So they hear a scream, and then Ben comes dragging the unconscious Puppet Master back into the room. He says he had to get a little rough, but he's just found out that Alicia's blindness may not be permanent. And without revealing anything more, he loads them into the fantastic car and goes flying off into the western hills of Pennsylvania, right here in my backyard.
Maybe it was your backyard.
Maybe it was.
Well, that reminds me. I mean, I just feel like if the real world were the Marvel universe, the accident you had a couple of years ago should have turned you into a superhero. So I'm wondering if you have any superpowers.
My superpower is, I've always said this, Mary, as you know, because I'm sure she's asked you, Mary San Giovanni's icebreaker with people is she asks them if they can have one superpower, what it is. And, whatever the person says usually reveals something about their inner self. If you want to fly, then that means you want to escape. If you want to be invisible, then maybe you have self-esteem issues. I was the first person to ever tell her I don't want superpowers. And she's like, "Well, all superheroes have superpowers." I'm like, "No, Tony Stark doesn't. Batman doesn't." She says that reveals about me that I want total control over everything else.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, Brian, desiring that means what you want is to be a multi-billionaire. But what you're missing is that Bruce Wayne and Iron Man are both much smarter than you.
Well, I'd like to say I'm more street smart than them.
That doesn't help you build a super suit.
I've got Luke Cage or Matt Murdock sensibilities out on the street. I don't have the money to back it up yet.
Oh my God! All right.
So anyway, tell us the story that the Puppet Master tells Spidey and Alicia. Why have they come to Western Pennsylvania?
Well, they're flying over the skies of Western Pennsylvania with Ben piloting this iteration of the Fantastic Car, and Spider-Man with Alicia and Philip Masters in the back. And basically, the Puppet Master says he thinks Spider-Man's only there to see his ignominious defeat. A defeat which began several years ago near a town called Watershed Lake. Basically, he was a young scientist. He was working with a colleague named Jacob Rice, and they were looking at this irradiated clay. I'm not sure what the deal was, but this is the thing I found really interesting about this issue, is that the way that the Puppet Master is telling his story makes his story sound a little bit more sympathetic than it ought to be.
Yes.
Because if there's a creep of all time, it's this guy.
He's number 2 in my book for Marvel villains. Egghead will always be the number 1 creep.
Yeah.
But Puppet Master is way up there. Yeah.
So Jacob Reese was his colleague and friend, maybe his only friend. And Philip Masters was in love with Reese's wife, but also with the idea of being the father to Reese's daughter, who is Alicia. So he envied their family. He envied Jacob's family and wanted it for himself. So he basically became, the sidekick, favorite uncle, guy who hung around all the time at the house because he was single and was on his own. And he wanted to find a way to destroy what he and Jacob had built together. He could think of no other way out of this situation. He needed to get away from all of it. But while he was in there trying to destroy it, Jacob showed up. There was a fight. And let's see, is it Jacob? Jacob gets his head bashed in basically and ends up.
The clay reaches critical mass,
right.
Which is
the
not
radioactive clay explodes.
Yeah, and basically, long story short, obviously Jacob dies. The mother is uninjured, but Alicia, the little girl, is blinded by the radioactive clay.
Right, and so the radioactive clay has both given Philip Masters his ability, and he uses the clay to perform his tasks as the Puppet Master. And Alicia is blinded, but now he thinks that when the mother died later, that's when he discovered that he could control people through these puppets. He claims he still loves Alicia, but he's always been a weak man. And now he thinks that somehow there may be a way, if they access the underground lair where this all was done, some way to reverse Alicia's blindness.
Right. So they go looking for his lab, traipsing around the backwoods of Western Pennsylvania. And as it's the 4 of them, or actually, no, I guess they leave Alicia in the Fantastic Car, and the 3 men folk go out looking for the lab. As they do, though, this transmitter rises from the ground and shoots a beam out. The Puppet Master knowingly avoids the beam, but it hits both Ben and Spider-Man, knocking them over. And then the Puppet Master leaps onto this transmitter, and it disappears back into the ground, taking him with it.
Yeah, and then basically Ben smashes a hole in the ground where the transmitter had come up. It leads them into this underground base. Ben trashes that same transmitter, and they're just trying to figure out how to find the Puppet Master.
Yeah.
They have to split up. And again, there's not, this sequence is really fun, but also kind of silly. But the big revelation comes on the next page, Brian.
That's right. Because the Puppet Master, as it turns out, this underground complex is already occupied. Because the Puppet Master is confronted by another Marvel villain who I don't think we've ever talked about on this show, and that is the Mad Thinker, who's basically like a bad version of Reed Richards, I guess would be the way to describe him. And Puppet Master is telling him, I had to lead them here. There was no other choice. Surely you don't think I wanted them to discover our retreat, not after all our efforts to keep it secret from the world. So apparently Mad Thinker and Puppet Master are working together on something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I want to say the Mad Thinker to me has always been this character who's basically like, anytime you get together with some of your friends and some of their friends, there's always one guy in that enlarged group who, if you take him into a bar, he's going to be the big mouth guy who knows everything about everything. And it's just like his job is to just think about and how to fix the world. He knows. That's the Mad Thinker.
That's a great analogy.
That's the guy who's like, if the world would only follow my lead, I know how to fix everything. Anyway.
So the Thinker and the Puppet Master, they devise a series of traps, none of which stop the Thing or Spider-Man for long. But eventually they do. Both are rendered unconscious, and the Puppet Master has the Mad Thinker send his android slave to protect Alicia during all of this.
Yeah, and I like the scene when Spider-Man is ping-ponging off the walls of this shaft, at the bottom of which are deadly spikes that will kill him. Because I'd love to hear the explanation of why his ability to stick to walls works in some places, but that it's possible to make one of those walls smooth enough that he can't stick to it.
Yeah.
Like he sticks to glass, friends. So I'm not sure exactly what process you've used to arrive at this ability, but in any case.
He escapes. Meanwhile, the android approaches Alicia. Now, keeping in mind, she's blind. She can't see who it is. So at first, she hears those heavy footsteps and she thinks it must be Ben. But it is not. And then she screams. And it's up to the Puppet Master to stop the Mad Thinker. So he picks up a conveniently placed pipe wrench and he's sneaking up behind the Mad Thinker and he raises it over his head. But he just can't bring himself to do it because he's a coward. And then we get the true team up in this issue of Marvel Team Up. Because what happens, Chris?
Spider-Man uses his webbing to blast the back of the wrench so that the wrench hits the Thinker in the head and knocks him out. So that the Puppet Master couldn't bring himself to do it, but Spider-Man finishes the job for him.
That's right.
Ben shows up in time to smash the robot using a tree, it looks like.
Yeah.
Trees suffer a lot in these comics, but he knocks the robot into the water. It shorts out. That's the end of that. And Spider-Man shows up, and now they're buddies. Let's see, what was that explosion? Oh, I see.
Well, yeah, one of the villains escapes, but we don't know which one. We suppose it's probably the Thinker, but the other one blew up the complex. And Alicia says, all these years, my stepfather lived with his guilt buried inside him. Perhaps he discovered he couldn't live that way any longer, and this was his way of saying how sorry he was. Except that's not the case.
At this point, believes that the Puppet Master has blown himself up, but of course we know that has not happened, and he will return.
Exactly.
Listen, Brian, let's take a moment as we move to Marvel Team Up number 7. Did you watch the new trailer for Shang-Chi?
I did.
I'm so excited.
We've talked on the show before. Shang-Chi was one of the few Marvel titles that I was not exposed to as a kid, simply because it was never available at my local newsstand.
Yeah.
The first issue I actually read, I think, was issue 100. And my only other exposure to him was in Marvel Team Up and Marvel 2-in-1. So this was low on my excitement list, but that new trailer has me jazzed.
Well, firstly, you should go back and read the original Master Kung Fu series.
Yeah.
It's a great espionage series. It's really, really good.
Right.
But watching this trailer, I was like, okay, so we've got Razor Fist is in there.
Right.
And then we have all the family stuff. And then we have the Abomination and Wong in a cage match.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, where'd that come from?
Yeah. Now, again, keeping in mind, I didn't read this book back in the 70s. Did Abomination appear in I mean, I think of him as a member of Hulk. No?
No. And there is a dragon in there, and I'm hoping it's Fin Fang Foom.
Oh, it has to be Fin Fang Foom.
I mean, that would be amazing.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I'm very much looking forward to it. I was a big fan of the Eternals comic book.
Yeah.
You know, I was just the right age when that came out, and all those concepts were new to me, and I loved Jack Kirby's bizarre splash pages and art in that book. Watching the trailer for the movie, I'm just like, but the Shang-Chi trailer really has me excited.
Yeah, no, it looks great. All right, so we should say that that issue 7 we just covered was written by Jerry Conway with art by Gil Kane and inks by Mike Esposito. This issue 7 is written by Conway with art by Ross Andrew and inks by Jim Mooney. Now,
that's right. Now,
go ahead.
Yeah, folks, we're just going to spoil it for you ahead of time. Neither Chris nor myself are feeling this issue. This is filler in the worst sense of the word. And I mean no disrespect to Jerry Conway or to Ross Andrew, both absolutely legends. I mean, they're among the GOATs. That's greatest of all time for you old people. But this was obviously a rushed fill-in issue. They probably had other deadlines and writing and drawing other books, and this feels like it was slapped together at a bar somewhere on a cocktail napkin.
Yeah. So it's Spider-Man and Thor. And the best part of the issue to me is this opening page where Peter Parker comes upon a bunch of, gang members or thieves trying to rob and or rape a woman. And he has his costume on underneath his clothes. He kicks off his shoes, and he's able to use his spider abilities to stick to the wall and then do a like a spinning cannonball at the bad guys. He saves the woman, and she's rather ungrateful and rushes off. And I really liked that. And I like this whole scene. I also love the fact that watching this whole thing unfold is the mighty Thor. Yeah. He's sitting just one level up on a fire escape with his legs dangling over the fire escape like a little kid, just watching the show unfold before him. And then there's a conversation between Thor and Peter Parker, because he doesn't know this is Spider-Man at this point. And I found all of that definitely worth the price of admission. I thought it was really good and interesting interaction to me.
Agreed.
But then what happens, Brian?
Well, yeah, then all of a sudden, in the midst of this actually really good conversation between Peter Parker and Thor, something happens to the sky. Thor has seen this effect before, and he tells Peter to get inside the swing of his mystic hammer, or it could cost his life. Peter notices that everything's gotten dark, misty gray, and Thor tells him it's the result of the vortex. And when he stops swinging Mjolnir around, I did like this part. What we see here is a panel drawn only in black and white, except for Peter and Thor. They're still in color, but everything else is black and white line art, and it's a cool effect.
So the idea here is that everything looks like a photo negative because time has been stopped somehow, and Peter and Thor can continue to exist within it. They do, And then they see others who are moving within this time stoppage. And it's basically a guy named Krillik the Cruel, a vicious troll who hates Thor, and he's leading his men. And there's some fighting. And honestly, the rest of this issue, I'm just like, this is stupid. But go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, there's fighting. Anyway, this troll, he says Earth is just a cosmic pawn, a stepping stone to the ultimate conquest, which is, of course, Asgard. And he's going to do that by using a device called the Dark Crystal. This is before Jim Henson came along with the Dark Crystal. And what it does is it dams the stream of time. And he's going to use this to bring about the destruction of Asgard.
Yeah, I'm not sure how exactly. They go to Avengers headquarters, but they see that all the Avengers are stopped in time. Thor needs somebody to go to Asgard, so he spins his hammer and creates a vortex that allows Spider-Man to pass through to Asgard on his own, while Thor goes off to, I don't know.
He goes to a planetoid orbiting somewhere near Jupiter.
Yeah. Told. I mean, okay. where he fights that same troll and his guys again.
Yep, exactly. So more fighting, more boasting from the troll, more shots of the Dark Crystal. And again, we're not glossing over it. It's so much filler.
Yeah,
it's like a Brian Bendis scripted breakfast table scene on steroids. And I say that with love, Mr. Bendis, if you're listening, but come on,
No, I mean, again, what Bendis does,
he'll sneeze.
Bless me. Yeah. No, he adds plot. I mean, the things like if Bendis has a lot of talking, it's because he's getting a lot of ideas and plot and character relationships into something, even though the scene might take forever.
Exactly.
This, in a weird way, is like the opposite.
This is repeating information we were given 6 pages ago.
Right, exactly. So it's like, why do we need this? So Spider-Man goes to Asgard to try to get this magic egg, the Dark Crystal. And so he's not with Thor, but they're fighting the same guys.
Yes.
Same guys. And the costumes are just weird looking. And then the only other good part of the story, like the beginning, is the very end.
Yeah. Suddenly, when it looks like Krillik, the troll, is going to get the best of both Spider-Man and Thor, a third hero appears. It is the Watcher, who we've covered on this show before. And the Watcher says that the Dark Crystal is his, and it was stolen by Krillik. So he has come to reclaim it, and he does. And that's the end.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I like it. That was, again, he says, when all trace of the trolls has been removed, the Watcher pauses and, yes, ponders. Was it luck which involved Spider-Man and Thor? Or was it, as it always must be, something more? Perhaps, because he's always pondering the fate of the universe. I can't wait till the Watcher eventually shows up in the MCU.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm just, that issue was trash. I mean, it just was like, what is going on here? Why are we here? It reminded me of the Tunnel World saga, with the 5-issue, 6, 7, 12 issue, whatever it was, Defenders run from Dave Kraft.
Yep.
That just like there was so much skimming involved in the Tunnel World saga. This, I didn't skim this, but I wanted to.
Right.
So hopefully.
Well, next week, Marvel 2-in-1 issue number 8 and Marvel Team Up issue at number 8. Now, I have not read that one yet, but Chris, it's an old favorite of yours returning to the show.
It is.
The Cat. Now, I'm curious, is this Tigra or is this Patsy Walker Hellcat? Because both of them have wore that costume at one point.
Yeah, that's a good question. Now that you ask,
we will find out.
It could be Greer, Nelson, or it could be Patsy. I must be Greer because interesting. Because I think that Patsy never was called the cat.
Well, there we go. So.
Yeah.
We will have that for you next episode. As always, folks, if you enjoy Defenders Dialogue, Chris and I certainly enjoy it, and obviously some of you must, at least somebody at CBR does. The best way to support this show is to support our engineer, Matt Wilderson. He is the one who makes us sound good every week. Maybe he'll get around to editing out Chris's sneeze. Maybe he'll leave it in there so that this makes sense at the end of the show. But yeah, Matt not only is our engineer, but he's an author in his own right. He's an editor, and he's a podcaster. This week, I'm going to promote his podcast. Usually I promote his books. He has two. First of all, Grindcast, which covers all things pop culture. It is hilarious. You should check it out. Very long running. I think they're on their 7th year now. He also does the Ghostwriters podcast with Mary Sangiovanni and Summer Cannon. That one, they talk about the art of writing and the craft and business of writing. So check those out. And yeah, Chris, do you want to talk about your upcoming event, or should we save that till it gets closer?
I think we should save it until it gets closer.
All right. Well, then I have nothing else. Do you have anything for our audience?
I only have, Brian, a hearty Excelsior to you and all of our 4 listeners.
All right. We'll see you next time, folks.
Defenders Dialogue. You can listen to this episode and all previous episodes for free on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play Music, and wherever else podcasts are available. Defenders Dialogue is written and produced by Brian Keene and Christopher Golden. Our theme music is by Xander Harris. Our engineer is Matt Wilderson. Check out his books on Amazon.com.